A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Cam Edwards, your host. And while a well-regulated militia may be necessary to the security of a free state, AA batteries are necessary in order to get this monitor behind me working. And unfortunately, I'm out of AA batteries. So technical difficulties today. We're down to one camera. Probably more annoying to me than it is to you, hopefully. We do have a good show for you, though. Darren Leung is going to be with us. He is the owner of Westside Range in Manhattan, one of many ranges around the country that have been forced to close because of coronavirus concerns. Now, Darren's big concern is whether or not he is going to be able to reopen Westside Range in a few weeks when Governor Cuomo's order expires and businesses can start to open their doors to customers once again. We're going to talk with Darren here in just a couple of minutes and find out what's going on there with Westside Range and what gun owners in New York City are doing to help, what you might be able to do to help as well. Do have some other news to get to. Headlines here. Obviously, still more fallout from yesterday's Supreme Court decision mooting the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus New York City case. We told you yesterday, talked with Tom King of the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, who was, I think it's fair to say, bitterly disappointed in the Supreme Court decision. Alan Gottlieb of the Second Amendment Foundation, a little bit more optimistic about the Supreme Court taking cases in the future. And yesterday afternoon, we did see the orders come down for cases that the court will be considering in conference on Friday. And all 10 Second Amendment cases that the court has been holding, all 10 of them are up for review in conference on Friday. And by Monday, May the 4th, we could learn whether or not the Supreme Court is going to hear another Second Amendment case and what that case might be, or more than one case, quite honestly. We did see 4 justices yesterday. Justice Kavanaugh concurred with the majority opinion mooting the challenge to the New York City gun law because New York City changed its law. Kavanaugh said, yeah, New York City made this case moot by changing the law in question. However, Justice Kavanaugh said, I also agree with my justices who've dissented, Justice Alito, Justice Gorsuch, Justice Clarence Thomas, that the court really does need to hear a Second Amendment case before long because these lower courts are ignoring what we said in Heller and McDonald. So it takes 4 justices to agree to hear a case. We've got 4 justices that are ready to hear a Second Amendment case with Justice Kavanaugh, Justice Alito, Justice Gorsuch, and Justice Thomas. The big question is, what would Chief Justice John Roberts do in terms of deciding a case? But in terms of taking a case, it's pretty clear that the votes are there to take one or more of the 10 cases that are going to be considered on Friday. And again, the Supreme Court has a number of options available to them. They could take more than one case. They could decide, we're going to take on the challenge to California's microstamping law, which has, in essence, it's a slow motion gun ban. No new handguns have been made available for sale in California since the microstamping law was actually put into effect back in 2012. And you've also had existing handguns that have been available for sale in California that have dropped off the list of handguns deemed not unsafe for sale because of, a simple design change. They'll change the placement of a screw. And California DOJ says, oh, no, that's a new model. That's not the old gun. That's a new model, and that can't be sold unless you've got the microstamping technology, which doesn't exist, in these handguns. So the Supreme Court could take up that case. The Supreme Court has a number of cases dealing with the right to carry that it could take up. Remember, the New York City gun case dealt with transporting a firearm. The law in New York City that was challenged said if you're a legal gun owner in New York City, you can't take your legally owned handgun outside of the city. You can only take it to a couple of pre-approved ranges, Westside Range in Manhattan being one of them. But if you wanted to go to a shooting competition in another state, you wanted to go visit family upstate New York, you've got to leave your gun at home. Now New York City has changed that law, but again, that was a challenge to a transportation law. You also have right now in a conference at the Supreme Court at least 3 challenges to carry laws around the country. There's Rogers versus Grewal and the Cheeseman case Those are both taking on New Jersey's carry laws and the good cause requirement that basically limits the ability to carry a firearm for self-defense to a handful of people in New York, mostly retired judges, retired police officers, political officials. The average New Jersey resident cannot bear arms for self-defense. They can keep them, perhaps, but they cannot bear them. So the court could take up one of those cases. We also have a case out of Maryland, taking on Maryland's good cause requirement. The court has a lot of options available to them. In the 10 cases that are before the justices that they'll be deciding on Friday, or at least hearing on Friday. It is possible, by the way, that Monday comes and goes. We don't have any new Second Amendment cases that are announced. But I suspect sooner rather than later, we are going to hear that the Supreme Court has decided to take another one of these cases just based on the remarks and the dissent by Justice Alito, joined by Justice Neil Gorsuch, Justice Clarence Thomas, and then Kavanaugh's concurring opinion in which he too stated we absolutely have to take a Second Amendment case and we need to do it soon. So we're watching what's going on at the Supreme Court. Again, next Monday would be the earliest that we would know whether or not there's going to be another Second Amendment case taken up by SCOTUS. Meanwhile, we're also watching a federal lawsuit that has just begun in Columbus, Mississippi, where the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, has Chokwe Lumumba, I believe is his name, has banned the open carry of firearms by just mayoral proclamation. Just decided that, you know what, while we got the state of emergency going on, I'm going to just go ahead and ban open carry. Yeah. Now, the Attorney General of the state of Mississippi, Lynn Fitch, has weighed in and said, nope, you don't have the authority to do that, not under the Emergency Powers Law, not under the Mississippi Constitution, not under the U.S. Constitution. You are not empowered to simply declare that people don't have a right to carry. Hours after the Attorney General sent a letter to Mayor Lumumba stating that he really needed to rescind this order, he sent out a note of defiance, held a press conference, said, no, I'm doing this for the children. We have violence on the streets of Jackson, and the way to address this violence is to ensure that people cannot legally carry a firearm openly. I don't think that's the way to actually address violence in Jackson. I think you got to go after the people who are committing these acts of violence on the streets of Jackson, and they don't give a damn whether or not they're legally carrying because they're shooting at people. They don't care that they're flagrantly violating a ban on open carry or that they're flagrantly violating the law that says you got to have a license to carry concealed. They don't care about that any more than they care about the life of the 5-year-old who was murdered or the 11-year-old who was murdered on the streets of Jackson. And going after the legal law-abiding residents of Jackson and trying to deprive them of their right to bear arms is not going to do anything to make the streets of Jackson any safer. And now the Mississippi Justice Institute has filed a lawsuit on behalf of a state representative challenging the mayor's order in court. The lawsuit filed in the U.S. District for Southern Mississippi on Monday. It could be several days before we get an emergency hearing in this case. Mayor Lumumba says at the moment the order is scheduled to expire on Thursday of this week. But I would not be surprised if Mayor Lumumba actually went ahead and extended this order despite the lawsuit. This, I think, is being done far less for reasons of public safety and far more for reasons of personal publicity. This is a political stunt. This is not a life-saving measure, and I suspect that the mayor is more than willing to have his day in court if it gives him more headlines, unfortunately. Now, let's turn our attention to what's going on in New York City, one of the epicenters of the coronavirus pandemic here in the United States. And it will be several more weeks at least before businesses can open up their doors, many of them anyway, to customers. That would include Westside Range in Manhattan. Darren Leung is the owner of Westside. And he joined me earlier today to talk about the situation that his range is facing and the uncertain future for Westside Range as well. Darren Leung, thank you so much, sir, for coming on the program. It's good talking with you today.
Cam, thank you for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure.
Absolutely. So Westside Range, like virtually every other gun range, indoor range anyway, in New York State, closed right now due to the coronavirus state of emergency. When was the last day that you all were able to actually operate as normal?
The last day of operation, Cam, was actually 3/23. Then after that, we kind of heeded the governor's call to close because we have a lot of senior members and we didn't want to jeopardize them.
Sure. And so since then, you all have been shuttered. Do you have any idea when you might reopen at this point, Darren?
The governor says that we're actually allowed camp to open up on May 15th, but, being that we've been closed so long, this has been such a hardship to us.
Yeah. So are you concerned that come May 15th, you're not going to be able to reopen the doors?
Absolutely, because again, realizing the fact that the range is for both law enforcement and civilians. The civilians are more or less going to be still at home, so it's going to be very limited how much business we could possibly do when we're actually able to open again.
How many customers do you typically serve on an average day?
An average day, depending on who comes in camp, could be either law enforcement or a combination of law enforcement and private members. You're looking at probably about a good 100 to 125 folks coming through back and forth. And we do a lot of classes also.
Yeah, and as you say, if the civilian non-law enforcement population is still staying at home, those numbers may be down, and you might be forced to socially distance. I don't even know how many lanes does Westside Range have, Darren?
We have a 16-point shooting facility, and that with the social distancing, that's really on the top of our heads right now. When we do reopen, how do we do this though?
Yeah, and how many employees do you have at Westside?
I have core employees of about 4 individuals that work for me, on a full-time basis.
Okay. And how have you all been impacted by this? Have you been able to keep them on? Are you applying for PPP funds?
Well, I applied for the PPP fund, Cam, but again, takes quite a long time and it's a lot to do and a lot of paperwork involved. The realization is that rent is coming up very quickly. The realtor doesn't really want to hear anybody's excuses because again, he's more or less in the same difficulties as anybody else. So that's why, we're reaching out to our customers and stuff like that for help and stuff like that.
Yeah, you all have actually set up a GoFundMe to help, and hopefully that your customers that are staying at home, can kick in some funds so that when you are allowed to reopen, you're actually able to do that. Have your customers been responding?
They have been terrific, Cam. Our customers have been coming through for us. A lot of the members have been, putting into the GoFundMe page. But I think the bottom line is they realize that if the range is lost, it's going to be pretty much, a generational situation where we're not going to be able to take care of the generation moving forward because where would they have to go? Where would they be able to shoot?
Well, absolutely. And listen, unfortunately, Darren, there are folks there in New York that would love to see your range shut down forever. We've sadly seen that in other parts of the country where, gun stores or ranges facing similar situations. Up in Massachusetts, gun stores and ranges are not even eligible for state relief funds, which is just absolutely crazy to me. Is there anything is there any help available from the state of New York that you all could rely on to help get you through the next few weeks?
Again, dealing with the PPP process, that's with the federal government, and we're actually dealing with, New York State unemployment too. They've been pretty much helpful to the employees and stuff like that. Trying to get their unemployment through. But other than that, it's really dealing with the federal government that's the toughest thing. But it's a long process. But, we're patient enough.
Yeah. What would you tell people who might say, you know what, if Westside closes, no big loss. I don't really like gun owners, and there aren't that many gun owners in New York City anyway. What would the city lose if Westside doesn't reopen?
Well, we're looking at something pretty monumental, Cam, because again, we're a facility that teaches in addition to being a range also. So a lot of practical knowledge comes out of that range. So that in itself is lost. Where are these folks going to learn how to safely use their firearms, get the knowledge that they need? A lot of people don't drive, and some of the ranges are like in the outer boroughs or maybe out in Long Island, which is not conducive to people getting out there.
Yeah.
So we're conveniently located in Midtown. It's easy to get here by train, and we're trying to do the best we can for the Second Amendment in the city of New York. And if we lose that camp, we pretty much lose everything at this point.
And obviously you don't want to lose the business that you have built up over the years. How long have you owned Westside Range?
The inception of Westside was 1965. I came about in 1989 as an employee. Then I slowly, more or less, took over the range by about 96, 97, and since then sold owner of the range itself.
So over 20 years, this has been your baby.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
What is it? Have you gone into work, Darren, since the range is closed? Have you visited this space, or have you just tried to stay away?
Well, we've made incursions into the city to go into the range camp just to see what's going on. Like, my guys are great. Even though they're not working, these guys are in and out of the business to make sure that they show people there's a presence there. Because, again, we have a stock of firearms with the ammunition, and the realization is that if you've heard in the news that commercial burglaries are going up in the city of New York, so my guys are always worried about that, and they're so conscious about that they want to be there. They want to just show presence that they're there constantly.
And what about, you talk about the fact that law enforcement uses the range as well. Have they been using the range during the shutdown, or is the range just closed completely at this point?
Well, the police department knows that we're kind of there, and they stop by, they make sure that we're okay. They step in to see if the guys are okay, if there's any situation that might arise or anything that may come up that they might be notified of. But no, they're terrific. They've been with us 100%. They come in, they support us. I know a lot of guys have also created the GoFundMe page anonymously because they can't really, tell who they are. So, but they've been supporting us.
Well, that is good to hear, and I hope that the Second Amendment community will support you as well, Darren. Again, this is a rough situation for so many businesses around the country in so many industries, but I think that you're right. I think that something would be lost because there are only a handful of ranges in New York City to begin with. To lose this one, obviously the personal loss for you would be immense, but I think the loss to the city and the loss, frankly, to the Second Amendment community would be felt as well. So I really hope that you guys can pull through the next few weeks. I know that, if you can get to May 15th, obviously things aren't going to get back to normal,
Sure.
but opening the doors would be a big step towards return to normalcy.
Monumental, my friend. Absolutely. Yep.
Well, what can folks do if they want to help? What's the GoFundMe, Darren?
If they go on to the Westside Range or even the Facebook, and we have a link that will put you into our GoFundMe page. And again, anything helps. We're always appreciative of whatever you guys can do. It's a small community, and we all have to stick together. Just like it's always been said, if there's ever a problem, we'll always be there to help you guys too. So at this point, we're the guys that need help now.
Absolutely. And I have to ask, have you reached out, and I don't know how much you can talk about this, but have you reached out to your landlord and said, listen, we've been shut down. Is there any way that we can you can work with us on rent? Is that a possibility going forward?
Absolutely can. We have. And the realtor has been an absolute gentleman. But again, some of the realizations that he has a business to run also. He's facing the same problems as we are. He's trying to do the best he can. He's working with us, but to be quite honest with you, without those doors open, I can't make profit to more or less get that bank account up and running again,
Yeah, absolutely. And again, so many businesses in this same situation right now. Darren, my heart goes out to you and your employees, and let's stay in touch. Can we do that? Can we check in next week, see how you're doing?
Please do. Absolutely. I'd be glad to talk to you again, my friend. It's a pleasure.
All right. Well, listen, the pleasure's all mine, Darren. Thank you for joining me today, and best of luck with everything. We'll be checking in very soon.
God bless you, my friend. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You too, sir. Darren Leung joining us from Westside Range in New York City. And we will put that GoFundMe link below here on YouTube and also in our story at bearingarms.com if you want to help Darren Leung and the employees there at Westside Range. In the meantime, let's get to today's Armed Citizen story, our good deed of the day, our recidivist report. We will start there with a story out of Dallas, Texas, where a teenager now facing a capital murder charge in the shooting of a 16-year-old in Irving, Texas. And yes, it turns out this teenager, unfortunately, already well known to law enforcement. The Dallas Morning News says Lucio Celis booked into the Irving jail on a capital murder charge on Saturday. Irving police called out about 1:20 a.m. on Friday to an apartment complex where they found a 16-year-old dead in his car with gunshot wounds to his head, chest, and left arm. Dallas County Medical Examiner Office said Monday it had not finished notifying the boy's family. Police looked at surveillance video from the apartment complex. They found 3 young males walking through a courtyard. One of the suspects can be seen holding a handgun before the group walked to the victim's car. Police said the video then jumps forward several seconds. All 3 suspects are seen running away from the car. Celis can be seen on the video getting into his car. On Saturday, officers stopped him after he ran a stop sign, according to an affidavit. Department following leads to track down the other suspects. It's unknown at this point whether Chellis and the victim knew each other. The police say that Chellis faces a capital murder charge because investigators believe the suspects actually intended to rob the victim. He had been on deferred adjudication probation for several felony charges, according to police, including 3 burglaries and the theft of a car in Irving, Texas. He had pleaded guilty to those charges back in February. 2 months ago, this individual pleaded guilty to multiple felonies and was placed on probation. And now 17-year-old Lucio Chellis behind bars once again, this time facing capital murder charges. Our armed citizen story from California, Lindsay, California, where a guy tried to knock over a liquor store only to find that, even in California, it is possible that you will run across armed citizens who can fight back and defend themselves. Lindsay police officers say they responded to the store on East Honolulu Street about 10:40 Sunday night. Officials say 3 young men barged into the store, at least one of them armed. Store clerk took out his own gun, fired at the suspect, shooting one of them. Injured suspect taken to a local hospital, expected to be okay. Police say they recovered a replica weapon from the crime scene. The other 2 suspects ran away after shots were fired. Police say they believe the men are in their late teens or early 20s. The liquor store clerk, not expected to face any charges for acting in self-defense, but the investigation does continue. And finally, our good deed of the day, where a Good Samaritan in southern Mississippi saved the life of a police officer who had been involved in a fiery crash. The headline from the Sun-Herald newspaper there in Biloxi, Mississippi. Poplarville police officer, identified as J.D. Herring, clocked a vehicle going about 50 miles an hour over the speed limit. This was last Tuesday night. He activated his lights and sirens, chased the vehicle until it drove out of sight, and then Herring came to a curve, ended up hitting a gravel driveway, losing control, plowed into a stop sign before he slammed into several brick columns. Car burst into flames. Herring trapped inside. Police say a nearby resident pulled Herring from his patrol car, carrying the officer about 30 yards away. By the time the paramedics arrived, that patrol car, a total loss. Thankfully, Officer Herring is expected to be okay. It's going to take him a couple of months to get back on the job. He suffered a broken leg, stitches in his hand, but this could have been far worse if it were not for the quick thinking of that nearby resident and the bravery in battling the flames and pulling that officer to safety. So we don't know the name of this resident, this Good Samaritan, unfortunately, but in the right place at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing to save the life of Poplarville, Mississippi police officer J.D. Herring. Whoever you are, anonymous Good Samaritan, we thank you for your very, very good deed. That is all the time we've got for you on this edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. I'm about to run out and buy some AA batteries so we don't go through this nonsense again tomorrow. In the meantime, also, hey, speaking of nonsense tomorrow, it's not going to be nonsense, actually. It's going to be great. Jazz Shaw from Hot Air, Jazz Shaw from Hot Air and I going to be doing another VIP Gold Editors Chat for our VIP Gold members of Town Hall Media. That's coming up at 1:30 Eastern Time on Wednesday. If you're a VIP Gold member, hope to see you there. If you're not a member, you can subscribe at BearingArms.com. You can also subscribe to Town Hall Media on YouTube or the Bearing Arms Cam & Company podcast on Apple Podcasts. That way you never miss one of these programs. But I do encourage you to sign up, become a VIP Gold member. We have had a lot of fun with these live chats. I can't wait to ask Jazz all kinds of questions about UFOs tomorrow. This is going to be fantastic. In the meantime, have a great rest of your day. Until we talk again, be safe, be well, be free, and we'll see you here soon with another edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company.